Begin the Nedarim Daf, Mesechta Nedarim Daf. Begin on the top line of the Amid. We continue explaining. It's actually the continuation, the safest, so to speak, of the Mishnah Daf Yomi base. Actually, that's what the Quran has printed for the interpretation of the Mishnah, which we had mentioned a halacha of Stam Nedarim Lahachmer. We said that if someone says an unspecific statement, we're going to interpret it stringently when it comes to the halachas of Nedarim. That we explained in the Mishnah Daf Yomi base. Different cases about that the word can mean two different things. We said, okay, we're going to say it means a neder. And then we said a statement, upirushim lahakol, that its interpretation will go leniently. That we didn't explain in the Mishnah of the is that the Gemara is going to explain now in the Mishnah on the Chav, Am and Al. Shis corresponds because of Necheskel to anytime Dafachayim. Appreciate everyone is joining us for today's daf. Some of this discussed in today's daf are, like we said, the cases of pirushim lahakol, in which the neder then therefore is not effective, meaning we don't consider that as a neder. The distinction between a Talmid Chacham and Amaretz regarding a pirush lahakol, do you even need to go ahead and have them be shoyl on such a neder? Which we have two machlekes in Rameh and the Chacham. There's 3 points. Chacham and the Rameh agree on one. They disagree on 2 points. One is when they come to ask, do we punish them? As we'll see what that punishment would be. And the machlekes is very important, fundamental machlekes regarding how do you undo the neder? Do you need a Pesach lenidra? What does a Pesach mean? A Pesach means an opening that, had I thought about this at that time, I would never have taken a neder. Or is it sufficient with Pesachim b'charata? No. Maybe when I no other way I would have still taken the neder, but now I subsequently regret what I had done then. That's a machlekes if that is sufficient or not. Some of the other concepts we mentioned in today's daf are anyone who gets embarrassed, who's ashamed, he doesn't sin so easily because of the shame that he has. And also the Gemara ends with many proper hanagis by Nishla Ishta regarding intimacy between husband and wife. So in the previous mission of Chesem Beis, we had mentioned this idea, although we said Stam Nedarim Lahachmer, but in Pirusham, but regarding if a person states, regarding a neder that has multiple meanings, that he says his explanation, even the kula, then we're going to go with his interpretation, and therefore the neder is not going to be effective. Meaning, if he comes to explain what he means, then we're going to go with his interpretation. And the Mishnah gives several examples of this halacha. So again, the Ram here is on the bottom of the Chesed Beis, but the Mishnah is on the top of Chaf and Aleph, which again the Mishnah is coming to explain now what it does mean pirushim lahakol. Now, the Ran says a very important chiddush what the Mishnah is coming to tell us. The Mishnah picks different examples that is coming to interpret what he means to say. It doesn't say the cases that we mentioned in the Mishnah Daf Yomi. For example, let's say, the first case was ned b'cherem. We had said in the Mishnah Daf Yomi on Beis, not b'cherem. Chem can mean 2 things. It can be cherem kahanim, which is a certain type of gift you give to kahanim. It can be cherem gevaya, which is a certain type of hektish. Cherem gevaya is a neder. Cherem kahanim is not. It's not forbidden for zar. So we said, okay, you say cherem, it can mean either one. We're going to say stama is lahachmer. Now our Mishnah, when it says pirushim lahakol, that you could say what you meant to say leniently, it doesn't say the guy saying cherem kahanim. He says something else, like regarding a fishing net, as we're going to see in a moment. Why doesn't it pick the cases that are mentioned in the Reisha on the Chesem Beis? It's saying a chiddush, that even though he's interpreting his statement in a madna, like they say in Yiddish, like in a bizarre type of interpretation, which really is not really the normal interpretation you'd normally say for cherem, even so, you're going to be believed that far. That's why the Mishnah picks, you'll see, not the interpretations that we said in cases of what it could mean lahakol on the Mishnah Chesem Beis. Even more bizarre, we're going to still go with pirushim lahakol as the Mishnah begins. Not the cherem. Let's say someone says, I swear by cherem regarding what I'm going to eat from that person. When he says, hey, I didn't mean cherem gevaya. I said lo nedarti el b'cherem shel yam. Cherem shel yam is like a net where you trap fish from the sea. That's called a cherem. That's one of the usages of that word cherem. So he's believed to say that's what he meant. And therefore it's not going to be a neder. Let's say he says b'carbon. Now carbon is your classic neder. Hatzfasa, transferring. No, Vami says lo nedarti el b'karbon shel malachim. He says what I meant to say was a gift to the king, something that you're serving for the king. He's believed. It's not going to have the halach of hektish. Now, let's say someone's speaking with his friend, and he tells him Hare atzmi carbon. Now, although it would appear like as if he's making his body forbidden on that person like a carbon, and he says, no. What I meant to say was, lo nadarti el be'etzim shanachti li. Atzmi can mean myself, or etzim means bone. Atzmi means my bone. He says, el be'etzim shanachti li. I have a bone that I leave for myself. Li is noidaboy. To take a neder with it. In other words, that he has this that's put away for that purposes to make a neder with. He's believed to say that he didn't make himself forbidden like a carbon to others. Rather, that it's regarding the bone that he sets aside from the Nadarim. So essentially, it's not going to be a regular neder, and he's believed in all these interpretations. Or similarly, it says the Mishnah further, another case. Kainim ishti nenisli. I take a neder, my wife is forbidden to have benefit of me. Which we said kainim is one of the kinuyim, one of the slangs of carbon. But he says, when I said my wife, I meant my first wife. Shegirashti, my ex-wife that I divorced. So, says the Mishnah regarding all the things that we said, al kulon, on all of them, the halacha is that ein nishal mahem. Now, what does it mean you're not shoyl on them? So the Gemara explains what it means to say is that you don't, if you're a Talmid Chacham, you don't have to go to a Talmid Chacham, to the Rav, to the Bezdin, to be shoyl on it. Because when a person takes a neder b'cherem and he says, I only meant cherem shayam, I meant a fishing net, he's believed, and he doesn't have to even be shoyl on it. This halacha, everyone agrees to. But there's two other halachas. V'im nishalu. What does it mean, v'im nishalu? It means to say, if he's a person that's not believed, for example, he's an Amma Oretz, ignorant person, we don't believe him as much as the Talmid Chacham, he has to be shoyl. So such a person, Allah is going to be that we punish them. Meaning, what does it mean we punish them? If the person that Amma Oretz had treated what he had said should be forbidden as a neder, he treated it as permitted, before he came to ask to see if it's going to be ineffective, this neder, we punish him that we don't permit him that neder, which we're going to, because he is allowed to be perushim lahakal. But not like a Talmid Chacham that's automatic. He has to first come to the Rav. If before he came to the Rav, he treated it as mutter, even though he had made the neder that should be forbidden, we're not going to permit from the neder until he treats days prohibitedly for the amount of days that he did it permittedly, as the Gemara is going to explain on this daf. And that's one point. A second point is, I'm saying this slowly because the words, if you would just read, it's hard to read the words. So we're saying 3 points in this one sentence. That's a nishal lahem is 1 point to Talmid Chacham. Second point is b'nishalo v'zam oretz ein shenoisa. We punish him, meaning that he has to keep the same amount of days that he didn't keep it. He has to now keep it. And the third point is u'machmirin aleihan, and we're stringent on them. What does it mean stringent on them? It's a very important halacha, although it's 2 words, is that we don't open up the neder with a charata. It's not enough for him to have regret, which we can explain momentarily from the Ran. What does that mean? And rather, what do you require? You require a Pesach. You need to have an opening, which is some type of an error for the future that had I known that, I would never have done that. Not regret now from before. It's an opening to say, did you really mean that? I said, no, I didn't. Okay, then you don't have to keep that net. So this is all Divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir requires these 3 criterion. Again, one's Talmid Chacham, that he doesn't have to ask, and 2 things that we punish the Amma Oretz, and we're stringent in that require a Pesach. The Chachamim, they disagree on the final 2 points. They say, first of all, Peschel and Pesach mimokam acher. We could create an opening from elsewhere, which the Ran explains. The Chacham are coming to disagree on the final 2 points. First of all, that we don't punish him if he violates the neder. And we also are paiseach with charata. Why is that called mimakam acher, says the Ran? Because it's not from the essence of the neder. It's from somewhere else. A Pesach is from the opening. The words you said, we have an opening. We say, no, you didn't really mean to say this. Charata is, no, it's from somewhere else. I said this neder, and I would still say the neder, but I regret having done this. That is Pesach mimakam acher. So, therefore, says the Ran, they're disagreeing in the final two points. One of them is explicit, one of them he seems to be inferring. And umalamdin oisan, and we treat them that, what do we treat them? So actually the Ran has two more words over here, and when he's interpreting this on Yud Ches Beis, sheyinagu isser. We treat them that they should conduct themselves, that it's prohibited even by these Nedarim. What is that? What are we talking about over here? The Ran explains, specifically these cases over here in the Seifa, which really the wording seems to be more stringent than lenient. So we say, okay, then you have to have a she'ela. You have to go and ask from it to be permitting it, each opinion according to how he holds. But in contrast, what is the Ran trying to say? But those of the Reisha, let's say when someone took a neder, b'bosem aliyach, that was one of the cases on the previous mission of Yud Ches Beis. Someone swears, I take a neder on salted meat, which we said it could mean either salted meat of the mizbeach, which is dava another, or it could mean the salted meat of takrobet avodah zarah, which is a dava asa, which is not valid for a neder. If the person comes and interprets and says, oh, what I meant to say, I'm taking a neder like avodah zarah, or let's say by the case of cherem, where he comes and explains, I meant b'shil kahanim neder, then says the Ram, even by nama aretz, he would not have to have she'ela. This halacha that I was saying, that we're machmer, or even that we teach them to keep it aser until he opens up, which charata or pesach, whichever opinion you hold like, that's only these interpretations of the mission of Chaf, because those are bizarre. That's not, it sounds really like you said the Isser. Your interpretation is very far-fetched. So, okay, a Talmud Chacham maybe wouldn't have to, but in Ha'aretz, he has to treat it as Asr. On that, Malam Denaisan, that we treat him to take it as Asr, says the Ran, it's only these interpretations, but if he gave the interpretation of Chermi Kahanim or Takrevis Abedazar, then even the Ha'aretz wouldn't have to, because that really makes sense, your Perushim Lahakal. Now, why do we tell the Ha'aretz, these cases, at least these bizarre interpretations, to treat as Asr? Is Kadesh Lo Yinagu Kalas Reish Ben Nedarim. Again, either interpretation according to however he's saying it, so that he shouldn't treat it as lightheaded. This halacha, either one is going to say it, however they're going to say it, according to the Chachamim, their opinion contra Meir, but ultimately they're all coming out. There is some form of stringency for the Ha'aretz, because we don't want him to be very lightheaded when it comes to the laws of vows. Now, the Gemara asks a question. Hagufa Kasha. Seems to be an internal contradiction. Again, we already interpreted the Mishnah, but the Gemara doesn't understand it yet, and it doesn't read well. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Amrit, you opened up by saying, and these are the words of Remeir, Einishal Lahan, these Nedarim, you're not shoyal on them. When you say another B'cherem and you say, I meant Cherem Shayam, you're not shoyal on them. V'hadatani, and then the next words of that line was, if they're going to be shoyal on it, so we punish them, machmir, and we stringent on them. Hello, how do you read the sentence? You're not shoyal, and when they're shoyal, you punish, you're stringent. So we already explained this, but Amar B'Yehuda says, Hachitani, this is what you have to read the Mishnah. V'kulan, ein tzrichin sheila. All these cases we're explaining here in the Mishnah of Chav, you don't have to be shoyal. You're off the hook automatically. By Medrim, when we say this, b'tamlet chacham, by a Talmudic scholar, he's off the hook. He's believed to say, when he interprets it leniently, that it wasn't a valid neder. But regarding an ignoramus, shebali shal, that he's coming to ask because he has to ask, because we don't believe him. Ein shenai say him we punish, that's halacha number 1, umachmin love, and we are stringent, and that's halacha number 2. So the Gemara wonders, wait a second. Bishlam and I understand item number 3, that you're stringent on him. What does that mean you're stringent on him? That you cannot open up for him with regret. Do you regret what you did? Yeah, regret. We don't. I'm an artist to be more stringent. You have to find a Pesach. Find something that from the inception of the neder that he would never have done it. But what does it mean you punish him? What does that second number mean? Says the Gemara get the time like learn the Brisa, which we already explained from the Ram. Mishnah, someone took a vow of Nazirus, and he violates his Nazirus. We are not going to address to undo his Nazirus. Meaning to say, although he wants to come to the Rav and say, could you find me a Pesach for my Naziris? Yeah, but you already, before the Pesach Naziris, you already violated, which we spoke about similar to this the other day, that 10 days you didn't keep your Naziris. Now you're coming to undo it? No. First, do those 10 days that you did Isser. I want you to do Heter. Now, I mean, I want you to keep the Naziris, and then I'll come and I'll address, maybe I'll undo your Naziris. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and that's what we mean, that we punish him. Now, Rabbi Yisi just qualifies this halacha, and he says, but when we say this, is b'Naziris mu'etes, by the minimum Naziris, which is a period of 30 days. Of b'Naziris meruba, in other words, if let's say it was a period more than 30 days, then daya lamed yom, meaning even if let's say you didn't keep Naziris, you took a Naziris of a year, and for 50 days you didn't keep Naziris, then you don't have to keep all the days that you didn't keep it, that he has to keep it. It would be sufficient for a period of 30 days, which is the amount of a generic Naziris. And Amar B'Yisif says, since the rabbi said that we don't address such a person who wants to come to the Rav and say, oh, can you get me out of my Naziris? I'm not going to address it until you first keep it, the amount of time you didn't keep it. So Bedina de Bizdakiki. So then different, what you could infer is that if the halacha says you shouldn't be, if you have a court that does address such Naziris, Loi Ovid Shapir. They didn't do well. In other words, what do you mean? Of course, isn't that obvious? The Ran says, no. Don't say this, that the teaching was telling us that in this kokanloi, what it means to say is, don't try to go after those people. Say, Tzadikal, you took a neder, come here. Let me help you. This is not a good idea. That even though you usually go after those who didn't violate the Nedarim, meaning to say, usually the Rav will go over and say, here, come here. And he'll try to be Makar and say, it's not a good idea. And he'll try to go after him to undo his Nedarim, because as the Gemara is going to tell us on Daf Chav Beis, that whoever even keeps the neder is called a sinner. It's like as if he brought a carbon on a bummer. But, okay, maybe that you're going to tell me that you're not going to go after such a guy. But maybe if he comes to ask on his own, then you would address it to be moderate. That we're saying that no, it's not the case. Rather, that even if the courts go ahead and follow through with what he's petitioning for, they have not done well, that you have to go ahead and first treat it as usher the amount of days that you kept it as heter. I mean, that's the chiddush that the teaching is saying. You would have thought in this kalkul, let me say, don't go after. But if it comes to you, then you'll be matter. No. We're saying even if it comes to you, you don't be matter until he first treats it as usher for that amount of days. It says even one point stronger. It says mishamtinenle, such a court that actually goes ahead. That's it sounds like could be the person, but it sounds like that who's lay, that actually the court that does that, or maybe it could even be the person that you would excommunicate him, but that would seem to be strong. We're saying the courts. It sounds like in this life that you shouldn't address his point until you go ahead and have him treat as us. Now the Mishnah said, the sages, they said that they disagreed, as we said, on 2 points. We said Pesach, they said it could be mimokim acher the Pesach, which we said you don't need a Pesach, which is the opening per se, but you could have a charata. And we said that they hold that you're gonna punish. They disagree regarding the punishment. They hold einan shneisei, and they hold it's enough with the charata, so they're lenient on 2 points. Now the reason was because we said, etc. We don't want anyone to be mekel roish. We don't want to have people lightheaded when it comes to Nadarim. So the Gemara introduces many agadic teachings, starting off with this idea of we don't want people to be lightheaded regarding Nadarim, and then leading into other things of being cautious, precautious. A person should not be accustomed to making vows. That's the gersa we have in our Gemara, because it's going to end up being that you might even misappropriate for oaths. Meaning, if Nadarim and Shavuos are similar, if you're ending up doing Nadarim, you might come to violate even Shavuos, which, as we had mentioned on the previous Daf, they're more stringent because it says Lo Yanaka, and therefore that's something definitely we don't want a person to be violating. So don't even take Nadarim. Moreover, don't be accustomed to hanging around the ignorant person. Why? Because he's going to end up feeding you untithed produce. Don't hang around a kohen that's ignorant person. Where simple, our gears would sound like that, your friend is a kohen, he's going to give you truma because he's an ignorant person, and you're a zar, and I'll eat truma. The gears of the Ran is going to feed you truma to meya, meaning it's warning even the regular kohen not to hang around the kohen ha'ma'aretz, because although he's allowed to have truma, but he can't have truma to meya. Also, a well-known teaching from the Mishnah and Avos, Latar b'sicha ima isha, don't talk a lot of chatter with a woman, shasayf chalav l'deini, if you're going to come to adultery. Similarly, continue on that exact theme, Rabbi Yoshia, he says, call it seifa b'nashim, whoever looks towards women, seifa b'ala de'avera, he comes ultimately to the sin, which is generally that of immorality. And b'chol mistakal ba'kevish alisha, whoever looks at the heel of a woman, havli bonim she'in muganim. He has sons, he has children that are not appropriate. Why would that be? So the Taisa says it's a midah keneged midah. Since he's looking at the heel of the woman, which is an idea of erva, so therefore his children are inappropriate, which are that same theme of the species. Now, Rabbi Yosef, he actually says one step further. He says, he says, even if it's his wife, but she's a nida, which even though obviously there's times that he's permitted to his wife, but right now she's forbidden, she's an erva of nida, even that would be considered something inappropriate to be looking at the covered parts of his wife. Now, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, she explains, wait a second, we didn't mean actually the heel that's so highly inappropriate. That might be us, but when we're saying this, we say Akiva Diktani, the heel that we mentioned was B'makom HaTinoifes. We actually meant in the unclean place, a euphemism for the genital area, which is actually directly aligned with the heel. Which actually the Gemara Masechet Nida talks about if the woman finds dam on her heel, we presume that it came from Oisamakim because it's directly opposite. That's what we meant when we said the heel. We didn't mean just the heel of the woman. Now, Tanya Linda Brisa continue on these halachas regarding a person being discreet and shameful when it comes to the ideas of sin. So Tanya Linda Brisa, the pasuk says in Shemais, the pasuk there is that Moshe said to the people, "Don't be afraid because God's testing you." And this was by Har Sinai, where they said, Hashem, Moshe, we can't take this anymore because Hashem, our souls are flying out of our bodies over here. And he said, don't worry, Hashem is just testing you. And also because God's appearing over here by Har Sinai, so that his fear should be on your face. What does that mean, his fear should be on your face? Says the Brisa Zubusha. This refers to shame. What does that mean? Like the Rush explains over here, because whoever has fear is ashamed. So yira al panechem, fear on your face, is shame. Someone who's afraid, you see his face is starting to get blushed. That's what embarrassment is. And the pasuk says, "Levilti techato," that you should not sin. What does that mean? Malami, that teaches you shabusha mevila de yiraschet. Shame brings the fear of sin because, as the Ran explains, on your face sounds like boishes panim, which again is something that's seen on the face. And what does it say? Levilti techato, so that you don't sin. That's yiraschet. That's the yira that's on your face, which is that you won't sin. That is the bush that brings that a person's going to be afraid of doing something wrong. From here they say, Simin yafa ba'adam shu baishan. It's a good sign if a person has shame. In our culture, sometimes it's denigrated. The person is a shameful person, he gets embarrassed, his face gets flushed. That's a good thing because there's a morality over there that he has fear from something greater than him, where it's showing on his face, that actually keeps him doing sin. The people that have no morals, those are people that are shameless people, have no busha, and they can do whatever they want. That is something celebrated in our society. That is not the Jewish approach. The others, they say, the man who becomes embarrassed, it's not quickly that he's going to sin. Someone who does not have shamefacedness, his fathers did not stand on Mount Sinai, because the pasuk is giving a reasoning for Maimon Har Sinai. Moshe is telling the people, don't worry, God's appearing over here. The mountain is that his fear should be on your face. And what does it say in Devarim Chavtes? That's for everyone, for all time, from all the Jewish people. So if you don't have Boishes upon them, you're not from those Zera of the people that were there on Mount Sinai. Now, continuing in a related vein regarding this area of intimacy, which we were speaking about regarding the Busha, regarding the discrete custom of intimacy. So, Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai, He says, Daled Dvarim, there's 4 things that Sachali Malach Ashars, the ministering angels, told me over the following 4 things. First of all, Schigrin Nemahavai. Why do people have children that are lame, that they can't walk so well? The reason is Meshahoifchen Es Shulchanim. Now again, especially in these areas, but in the Talmud they always speak euphemistically because they always want to have the terminology that's not crass, that's more refined. But the euphemism is because they overturn the table. What does that mean? So one interpretation is that when there is intimacy, it's his face opposite her neck, where they have intimacy in the unnatural way, not face to face. Or it actually means that overturning the table is, instead of him on top and her on bottom, she's on top and he's on bottom. That's why their children are lame. Why would that be the reason? So the Ran explains, because since the deviation over here was something with the thighs, so therefore the punishment is with the thighs. Therefore their children can't walk so well, therefore they're lame. That's one thing. A second thing was ilman, that they have children that are mute. Why are their children mute that they can't speak? Because they kiss in that place, in the genital area. Therefore, that's something, again, this old midah keneged midah with the mouth is where they get punished. Point number 3, why are their children deaf mute? That they can't hear, they can't speak. Because again, obviously the act of intimacy is the area of where the children come from, and whatever activities are done then is going to have an impact on the child. So since they're speaking during intimacy, comes out their sin is with speaking and with listening, and therefore, like Taisus explains, that they should have had intimacy discreetly, and their voice is being heard. So it's a violation with their words and with their hearing. Therefore, the children will get that also in their speech and their hearing, which is a deaf mute. And the final point is sumim neimahavian. Why do they have children that are blind? Because they gaze at that area, the general area. Those are the 4 things that the ministering angels told Rabbi Yochanan ben Davai. So the Gemara says, really? That's that the case? But I mean, seems to be a contradiction over here. Because Shol was Ima Sholem. Ima Sholem was a well-known personality, a woman. So they asked her, Neima, why is it, as you continue to days, why is it that your children are very beautiful? Which the Rosh says, meaning without any blemish. They were very healthy children. So Amr Lahen, she said to them, I'll tell you why. My husband, again, sipur is a euphemism. Telling is really means a euphemism for intimacy. My husband doesn't have intimacy, not in the beginning of the night, not at the end of the night, which the Ran explains, because either one, you might have women go walking in the market or in the street, and he hears the women, whether it be early in the night or late in the night, which is already towards the morning time, and he might be thinking about that woman. Again, in Judaism, it's the most fascinating thing how refined and how cosmic our every action we do, and even our thoughts, we're so delicate that we try to be so careful, and therefore she said that they didn't have intimacy not in the beginning of the night and the night rather at midnight, which that's usually when most thieves steal at around like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like the people who stay up late already sleeping, people are early up, they're not up yet. That's when they go and do those string of robberies and flatbush, and they just take everyone's money, everyone's sleeping then. That's the time when they would have intimacy, because then he's not hearing anyone else, his mind's not on any other woman. Moreover, when he's having intimacy, megalatafach, well-known phrase, megalatafach mechasatafach. He reveals a handbreadth and he covers a handbreadth. What does it actually mean? So the way the Ran explains it is, the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Gimel Beis, which this is where the primary halacha of this term is that they permitted, when a person is urinating, to reveal 2 handbreadths. Because you need to have that, it doesn't drip, whatever, you need to open. The person's not supposed to, which is an interesting halacha in its own right, people just drop trousers. You're not supposed to just do certain things. There's certain halachas in the lavatory about how you're supposed to conduct yourself. So a certain amount of how much a person could reveal from himself. The Ran says that what Ima Shalom was saying was, from those 2 tfachim that he usually reveals when he goes to the male organ, he revealed 2 tfachim. When he was doing intimacy, one out of those 2 tfachim, megala tefach or mechasa tefach, one of those tfachim he revealed, one of them he concealed, because he didn't have to have the same concern you have regarding urination, which is about, you need to have more leverage over there. So he said the second tefach remained covered. That's the way the Ran explains it. The way other Mefarshim explain it is that, the way the Mefarish says it is that, no, that actually what he would do would be that when he was uncovering her, so as he uncovered and covered, so he would be Megala Tefach, and he would be Mechasa Tefach. Megala Tefach, Mechasa Tefach, again, so that they should be as discreet as possible until he got to the place of where it needed to be uncovered. He would keep on uncovering. So it was Megala and the Mechasa. That's the way the Mefarish explains Megala Tefach, Mechasa Tefach. But either way, obviously, like the Rush explains, this is to have awe and a person to be shamed, so that a person obviously has to realize that when you're coming to the most primal, instinctual, physical act, you need to make sure that you have the most presence of mind of spirituality in this moment. Now, V'daim love kamisha kafoy shay, also well-known halacha, that it appeared as if he was being subdued by a demon. What does that mean? So he was so quick, says the Ran, like a person who's so perturbed because the demon was forcing him. Or the way the Mefarish says, he did it very quick, as if he was being forced by a demon. Or that he was totally covered, says the Mefarish. Like someone who's afraid from a demon, just covers himself with his blanket. And the monsters, you cover yourself with your blanket. Which again is obviously this idea about being covered. And the Marti Loi, and says Shalom, I said to my husband, Matam, what is this all about? Why are you doing this so discreetly? Bamali, and he said to me, and this is really what the question's on. The question's not even on this main point. The question's on, you told me you're not supposed to speak during intimacy, and we see when they were having intimacy, she asked him, and he responded, I'll tell you why I'm doing all these things. That I shouldn't place my eyes, which doesn't mean just the physical eyes, but it means to say my attention, my focus, on any other woman. Because if I did, during intimacy, have a focus on any other woman, it would be as if his children were illegitimate, because the intimacy is the ultimate connection. As the Rush explains, thinking about another woman during Tashmish, it's as if the children are illegitimate, because there's a connection that creates a child. But there's a connection, physical, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and if a person's not having the thoughts just with this woman, then on some level it's being produced by another woman. So it'd be like an illegitimate child. Okay, that's not even the main idea what we wanted. The main idea was, we see they were talking during Tashmish. You told me one of the 4 things were, you're not supposed to be talking. And that it causes the children to have problems with being a deaf mute, Chaz Shalom. Says, well, like Kasha, it's not difficult. Depends for what? Classic Talmudic response. If it's regarding the marital intimacy, then of course you're allowed to talk, so that you could appease her. Chas v'sham, to just have intimacy and just kill for a shade and just rape a woman, that's not, we don't do that. To the contrary, of course, that they had a conversation so that they have this understanding. But stam shmuzerai regarding other things, that was a concern. And that could even be what Ima Shalom's husband was saying, because we start talking about different things. She's like, oh, what happened with Chani today? But you can't, this is sanctimonious. This has to be focused just on the connection between the couple. This cannot be introducing other things. Now, however, in spite of the fact that we just had this teaching about these 4 things that could have such catastrophic repercussions, Rabbi Shloimy says, Zu divrei Yechon ben Davoy. This teaching that we start off with on the Manal was the teaching of Yechon ben Davoy. But the sages said, Ein halacha Yechon ben Davoy. We don't follow the halacha like him regarding all these things that he said. Whatever man wants to do with his wife, meaning in the unnatural way, and all these different things that we said in he could do. This can be compared to a piece of meat that comes from the butcher house. Now, this can seem pretty, the mushal, again, but you have to understand, a mushal is a mushal. Essentially, what it's trying to tell us is that you have chomer, you have physical matter, which then you can go ahead and decide it based on the form that you're going to give it. That's all the mushal is coming to tell us. Although it might seem more of a vulgar example, but this is what it is. We are half angel, we're half animal, the way the Gemara tells us. So, if someone gets a piece of meat from the butcher house, you want to eat it with salt? Eat it. You want it sli? You want it roasted? You could eat it like that. Mavushal, you want to eat it cooked? Eat it cooked. Shalit, you want to eat it stewed? Eat it stewed. And so you can get fish from the fishing store, from the fish. You can cook it and eat however you want to. Basically, a euphemism that however you want to have this act of intimacy, that's how you could have it, and you're not limited to the way Yechanan Davai said it. Now, Rama Meimei says, wait a second. Man Malachi Hasharis. He says, Yechanan Davai said that these are 4 things that Yechanan Davai had, that the Malachi Hasharis told him. Who's Malachi Hasharis? He said, you must say, it means the Rabban, it must be the rabbis. Because the Item and Malachi Hasharis, Mamash, if you think to say it's really the ministering angels who told him these 4 halachas, how would Rabbi Yochanan say halacha is not like him? Malachim are more well versed in the formation of a child better than us, and if that's the case, that this seed would be somehow perverted because of these activities, for sure we should listen to Malach Hasharis. So rather, it doesn't mean the Malach Hasharis literally means to say the Rabban. But I call them Malach Hasharis. Why we call them the ministering angels? The Mitzayni Malach Hasharis because they're distinct, like the ministering angels, meaning they're distinct and separated from people. Like Malach Hasharis are very different than people, as we say in the Haggadah. Meaning that they were like their own distinct people and they weren't intermingled with the Egyptians. That's what it means that the Talmidei Chachamim are distinct, like Malach Hasharis and Torah and Mitzvahs, and they're more parish and they're separated from the rest of the populace, like the Kedusha of Malachi Hasharis. Now the Gemara brings a few stories relating to this halacha that we're discussing regarding the unnatural way or different ways of having intimacy, not in the classic way, which would seem to be what Yechanan Davai was trying to say. There was a certain woman that came from the Rebbe. She said to him, Rebbe, arachti lo shulchan. Again, this is a euphemism. Euphemism means to say it's just like a metaphor, it's just a mashal or something. I prepared the table for him. And he turned it upside down. Which again, what it means to say is that she was preparing herself for intimacy in the normal way, and he turned it upside down. Again, which already gave 2 interpretations of what that means. So I said to Biti, my daughter, the Torah permits you, meaning, the pasuk says, the way the Rambam explains it interestingly, he says, the pasuk says, Kikach ish isha, when a man will take a woman. Now, the word isha is from the word ish, meaning, she is taken by him, like it's Kikach, he's going to take her, to do with her as his heart's desires. Which, as Maral explains elsewhere, that by Yidden, it's considered connecting even in the unnatural way. Not by Goyim, but by Yid, even as he wants to do, it's considered connection. However, the Ram does point out a very important halacha from the Rambam and Hilchas Yisur Biyah, that although one might be able to have intimacy in the unnatural way, meaning anal or different ways, but as long as he's not Maitzi Shich Zer Levatala, which is a different halacha, unrelated to what we're discussing over here, which that relates to Pir Berivia, your seed has to be having the potential for creating a child. So even if you might be able to do certain activities, however, that's one idea. That's regarding this spiritual idea of intimacy. Then there's a different idea regarding, as any action is going to have many, many applications, ramifications, variables, that however, you cannot do it in a way that will destroy the seed. It has to be able to have that potential. So he says, look, the Torah permitted you, what can I do for you? Meaning to say, your husband is in his rights to go ahead and turn over the table and do it that way. Gemara says, there was a woman that came from the Brav. Amrullah, she said to him, Rebbe, my teacher, arachti lo shulchan, I prepared the table for him, v'afchay, and he turned it over. Amar, he said, Maishna min benisa, how is this different than a piece of fish which gets roasted or gets stewed accordingly? Again, this is probably Talmudic style. I don't think the Rabbanim today would speak like this, but again, it's the idea that he's illustrating that there's no difference, and if you understand it in its conceptual framework, you'll understand that this is within his rights of connecting with you, Chaymer and the Tzura, however you want to get it in more philosophical terms. That is what your husband's doing, and that's okay. Now the pasuk says, going back to some of the ideas we mentioned before, a well-known pasuk, "V'lo susuvu acher levavchem," do not stray after your hearts. What does that mean? I mean, we know after your eyes. Everyone's into Shmir Sinai. What does it mean after your hearts? Rebbe says from here that al yishta odom b'koizeh, again another euphemism. A person should not drink in this cup, and put his eyes in another cup. So it doesn't mean that you're in the bar and you're looking, what is this guy drinking? Right? And you're drinking a cup. That also you probably shouldn't do. You're not going to enjoy your drink. But rather what it means to say is that at the time when he's being intimate with his wife, he should not be thinking about another woman. That's what it means, don't stray after your heart. So although your eyes are pure, but your heart is not. Now Ravina says even the bigger chiddush. Says Leinitzchi, you didn't need to say this, El Dafila Beis Nasha. We're talking about both are his wives. Even so, when he's with one of them, he should not be thinking about the other one. The pasuk says in Yecheskel, it says, "Ucharoisi mikem," or it's "Uvaroisi michem," that I selected from you, hamodim v'hapoishim bi, those rebel and sin against me. What does that mean? Well, who are these that were selected by God that rebel against them? So Levi says, Elu b'nei teshamid, is also a well-known halacha. Obviously, it could be elaborated at great length. These are what a lot of chashan shmuzin about or whatever, but these are the 9 attributes that since there's an element of sin in the formation of the child, these children become rebellious ones and sinners. And that's what we mean. These are the selected seed, u'bereis mikem, they're selected to create children that are not ideal. And these are b'nei osnas mishagach, which is an acronym for these 9 types of characteristics. And this means that one should not be having intimacy in this way. What are they? So we're going to go through Aleph Samach Nun. It's going to go through. It's actually sin, whatever. B'nei ema. Number 1 is a terminology of fear, that they instill fear in their wife, that she should be intimate with her against her will. Because of that, the children do not come out appropriate, because he also acted inappropriate, as the Gemara says elsewhere, the one who pushes with his foot is a sinner, and that's the woman is intimidated from the husband, and that's how he has intimacy with her. Number 2 is b'nei anusa, are the sons of the ones that were raped, which is worse than the ones of b'nei ema, because b'nei ema, he doesn't literally rape her. Anusa is talking about where he actually forces her. Now, since these two are very similar, one's intimidation, one's actually forcing, so they actually counted as one, because as the Ram points out, Rabbi said teshamid, this, if you counted this, you'd see 10. So these 2 aleph are included in the aleph of ema or anusa. Number 2 then becomes b'nei snua, which is the same thing. He hates her. So why does the children come out bad? Because he's thinking about some other woman. And therefore the children come out inappropriate. B'nei nidui, which is that he has intimacy with her when he's excommunicated. Or b'nei temuda, where he has, it means that of swapping, where he has intimacy with one of his wives, thinking that it's the co-wife. Or b'nei meriva, which, as Ran explains, even though he doesn't hate her, but they were just fighting. And
B'nei Noida is very interesting because you had a few, I don't know whether it was in the last parak, that she was mutter to her husband when he was in Nidui. Huh?
She was permitted to him when he was in Nidui? Or we said that no, that to say we wanted to know, why do you have to say he had to permit himself before he came home? We said, why do you have to say that? Anyway, it's forbidden. So we said he could have a chayrim from some other town, but then he'll still be forbidden to have tashmish. Just show me afterwards where that is. But he's forbidden to have intimacy. And B'nai Meriva is that even though he doesn't hate her, but they were just fighting. No, you don't go ahead and without making up first have intimacy. B'nai Shechus is a guy so wasted, and he's like they're having intimacy, which might seem like a fun idea, but the Ran explains this is very important. Because he's intoxicated, he's not paying attention to his wife. This is very important. This is the ultimate purpose of intimacy, is to have and create a connection. And even though you might be having fun, this and that, and it might seem a great thing, it's not, because you're not focused on the spouse. B'nai Grusha Salev is that he already made up he's going to divorce already, but okay, we're still married, so no get was given to having intimacy. Obviously, it's not create a connection. B'nai Revuvia, which is different interpretations, the way the Ran says it is that it means to say a woman who had intimacy with many men. So like the children are mixed up and you don't really know who the father is. Those are inappropriate children. B'nai Chatzufa, which she has audacity to tell her husband straight out that she wants to have intimacy. That's the last of the Teshamidas. On that last point, says, is that really inappropriate? But since any man that if his wife petitions him, like Leah, who went out in front of Yaakov Avinu and she said to him, "Tonight you're coming to me," he's going to have children, sons. That even the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, they worried like that, because what came out from that union when Leah came towards Yaakov came out Yisachar. Yisachar, it says, Yisachar were Yedei Bina Le'itim. They knew the understanding of the times. So where do you see that it was greater than the Dara of Moshe Rabbeinu? Because Shneimit says a passage in the bottom. It says, Moshe Rabbeinu was tasked with getting men that were wise and understanding. Yet, you know what it says at the end in Devarim? It says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I took the heads of your tribes. It doesn't say that they were understanding, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't find men that were Nevarim. Yet it says in Bereshis, Yisachar Chamay Gorim, Yisachar was a strong-boned donkey. And it says in Divrei Yamim Aleph, Mimnei Yisachar, and the sons of Yisachar are Yoidei Bina Leitim. They know understanding for that, meaning from that union where the wife petitioned the husband, made children greater than the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, who you couldn't find in the Vainim. So what do you tell me that's one of the Teshamidas that the wife petitions the husband that's going to create inappropriate children? Says the Gemara, a well-known halacha, Hahi Demeratzi Artsuye. That's talking about where she seduces him, she appeases him with words of appeasement. Like Leah didn't tell Yaakov, okay, we're being together tonight. No, she said, come to my room. But she didn't explicitly tell him, I want this and I want that. That is inappropriate for the woman to mouth those words. Therefore, that would create, that's one of the Teshamidas, but if she puts on something nice and she says, oh, I really miss and I really like spending time, all that, then that's actually considered ideal, because that's creating the ultimate union, which is the purposefulness of this thing, and she wants it, and the husband actually, one of the biggest things in the Chassidus movement is this idea about piyus, that you're supposed to find this way of creating the excitement that's necessary, and that would not be considered something wrong. That would actually be considered something very, very great. Hadalach, Ve'elu Matam, shall return to the second parak, Mesech Nedarim, parak Ve'elu Matam, which spoke about those, not like the first parak, which spoke about the problematic Nedarim, which are prohibited, rather those which would not be considered as Nedarim. Thank you to any time.